Hello. Today, last video I talked about my 3 rules of time travel. This time around, I want to discuss some movies that did, in my opinion, did time travel poorly. These aren't necessarily bad movies. I mean, I actually like them. It's just their approach to time travel, their attempt to use time travel, they failed at, in my opinion. Could have done a little better with it. These are all movies that are 5 years old or older than that, but I'm still going to put out a spoiler alert. I'll try not to just launch into a talk about any of the plots. I will mention the movie and then give you a chance to click pause or fast forward or whatever, just so you don't miss anything. But I am going to be discussing the plots of these movies. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and give my 3 rules of time travel first. Again, just a repeat of those. And I'm going to mention some movies because all movies break some of the laws of time travel, in my opinion. So that's unavoidable. But my point, we accept it. We want a movie about time travel. We have to put up with the fact that people are going to make mistakes when they write about time travel. But the movies that I say do it poorly, do it exceptionally poorly. So to start with, the 3 rules of time travel are: 1, you cannot do anything which will prevent you from traveling in time. And Back to the Future actually does this. And again, this isn't one of my bad movies. I'm just pointing it out to show that a good time travel movie will still break one of the plots of, or one of the rules. So, Back to the Future, very few paradoxes except that Marty McFly nearly prevents his own birth. And if he prevents his own birth, then he can't travel in time and prevent his own birth. And that's a point. Most people say, oh, there were no paradoxes in Back to the Future series. And they did a very good job of avoiding them. They had a few minor ones. But sort of the main point of the first movie was that he nearly prevented his birth, which he couldn't do according to the rules of time, because that would have created a large paradox which would have prevented him from going back in time. Second rule is you cannot purposefully change time. So, and I differentiate, preventing myself from traveling in time is an absolute, I can't even do that by accident. Preventing myself from, or accidentally changing time, I can do as long as it doesn't prevent me from traveling through time, but I cannot purposefully change time. So I'm going to go back in time and kill baby Hitler, was my example from last time. Well, now he never grows up. He never makes the history books. I have no reason to go back in time and try to kill baby Hitler anymore. And so, purposefully changing time removes my purpose for trying to change time, in other words. And Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures was a good time movie in that it wasn't really about trying to change time. It was more, let's observe time, let's pull people from out of history and let them observe our time. But the basic premise was Rufus was being sent back in time to change time, because Wild Stallions was about to break up because Bill and Ted were going to fail their history project. So Rufus purposely goes back in time to try to prevent this. And so, like I said, it's a good movie. They break one of the rules of time, but it's broken in such a way, that most people would miss it altogether. They wouldn't even think, Rufus shouldn't be doing this even. And so it's a good movie. Then third, you can't go back and become your own ancestor, is my 3rd rule. And this, not going to go into movies, I'm going to go into the comic books on this, and Flash. So Barry Allen was working in his lab, and a lightning bolt struck some chemicals and somehow gave him superpowers. Yay, Then, later on in the comic books, they decided that he was running so fast that he went back in time and he became the lightning bolt, which gave him superpowers. And so he, in a sense, became his own ancestor, quote unquote. Or if he had never gotten superpowers, he never could have gone back in time and given himself superpowers. And again, that doesn't make the comic book series a horrible comic book series or anything, but there's use of time travel to try to make this happen broke one of the rules of time. And as long as you ignore that one point in the comic book series, I think the rest he did other time travel stuff as a superhero, and none of it was that bad. So not really a time travel franchise, but they incorporate time travel, and except for this one point, they don't do it badly. So it's an acceptable time travel franchise. So those are my 3 rules and 3 examples of them being broken, which wasn't done too poorly. So now we're going to get into some movies where they played around with time travel and they did do bad stuff with them. And again, none of these are bad movies in my opinion, but their attempt to work with time travel, they just sort of weren't careful, did some stuff they shouldn't have. And so the time travel aspects of these movies aren't that great, even though the movies themselves aren't that bad. So the first is the Planet of the Apes franchise. So it starts out with Taylor, and he's on his spaceship and discussing time travel, because they know that the Icarus, the name of their ship, is going to be going faster than the speed of light, or approaching the speed of light. And so he actually, he's discussing, and he mentions, the trip is going to be 6 months long for them, but for the rest of the world, it's going to be thousands of years. And so they know the time travel aspects of this. And then he gets into his little suspended animation chamber, and he goes forward in time. And they get to the future, and him and his crew, 2 members of his crew wake up. The third one, a crewman named Stewart, there was a crack in her suspended animation chamber, so she dies. And they show it real quickly. It's hard to tell how much has she aged, because the ship, like you said, 6 months has passed by. It looks like she supposedly is a lot older than that. Looks sort of almost like a mummy would. So really decrepit. So the introduction, him talking about how only 6 months is going to pass, and they turn around and they have her seemingly age more than 6 months. And that's sort of a minor point, and I could be completely wrong on that, just because, like I said, they show it so quickly, and I'm not an expert on forensic science, so maybe she did only age 6 months. But if they did intend for her to age more than 6 months, then it's just a matter of why. Because she's traveling at the same speed as the rest of the ship. And so she's still going to die, but her corpse should only be 6 months old. Now, that's minor. There are 2 other points here. First off, somehow they end up back on Earth, which this was a deep space mission. The computer was pre-programmed, so they should have, I think, the Omicron system, I think they were headed towards. And so how did they end up back at Earth? Time travel would not have turned the ship around or sent it back. So that's a question they never answer in the movie. They never try to answer it in the movie, and most people don't even ask it. It's we're on this deep space mission. How did we end up back here? The real problem comes when we get into Escape from the Planet of the Apes, which is the 3rd movie. Here, Dr. Zeyus and Cornelius travel back in time, end up back in 1970s Earth. They're being interviewed because Taylor, and then in the 2nd movie, a man named Brent went into the future. And the military acts as if they completely forgot that they knew people would be traveling in time. Again, Taylor in the first movie, he starts out talking about time travel. And how did he know this? Well, because all the scientists, when they were prepping for the mission, told him, you're going to be traveling close to the speed of light. Time's going to be moving differently for you. Then Dr. Zeyus and Cornelius go back in time. They're being interviewed, and the people interviewing them act like, we sent 2 ships up and they completely disappeared, and we don't know what happened to them. Well, you should have known that they were going to go off your scopes because they're traveling at a different time rate than the rest of the world. And so, questioning about the ships is logical. Acting like you don't know what happened to them is not. It's like we completely forgot about time travel 2 movies into the franchise just because, we don't have a good reason because. And so that, in a way, sort of undermines sort of your concept, especially like, now these movies came out like one at a time over the course of several years, but if you're watching them one right after the other, like I did, because I got them on disc, it just stands out as a glaring mistake. Why don't the people in 1970 remember that our rockets are going to be traveling at a different rate of speed, and therefore they're going to go off radar to us? Their belief should have been they ended up in the Omicron system thousands of years in the future. But they act like they didn't understand this. One good thing that the Planet of the Apes series did do was it ended 1,000 years before Taylor got into the future. So while we do have an alternate future, or an apparent alternate future, where apes and men are living together in harmony, there's still 1,000 years for things to go wrong and us to get back to the point where apes are ruling over humans. And they just allow this to happen. I don't know if they did that on purpose or not, but it was a good ending because they didn't just completely write out the first movie with the ending. They made it so the first movie was actually possible to happen. The second movie is Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines. Now, Terminator, again, it has some general time travel problems. Terminators are being sent back in time to try to change time, which you can't purposefully change time, so. But again, we overlook that for the sake of the plot of the movie. Then we get to Terminator 3, where we find out that CRS, Cyber Research Systems, the people who created Skynet, they got their technology because Arnold Schwarzenegger's hand and a microchip were left behind in the second movie. So Arnold became his own ancestor in a sense there. Again, very simple. Shouldn't be able to do that. But again, we can overlook that to some extent just because we want a good time travel movie. But then we get to the end of the third movie. And so we're going to try to stop Skynet from being created. And they run in and they're running around, but they're too late. It's already gone on the internet. Skynet is now an internet being. Can't stop it from being created. But that wasn't the whole point of being there. Arnold, or this version of Arnold, went back in time to make sure that John Connors and Kate Brewster got to the fallout shelter so that they would survive and be able to start the revolution. And it specifically comes out, and he John Connors is narrating at the end, and he says, you can't change time. And so the purpose was not to change time and try to stop Skynet. The purpose was trying to keep me alive. Okay. So they admit you can't purposely change time. and yet the whole point of the movie series was Cyborg going back in time to try to purposely change time. And the third movie specifically was cyborgs are coming back in time to try to change time, so we have to go back in time and try to keep these guys alive just in case the cyborgs do succeed in changing time. So at this point, if Arnold's willing to accept the fact that cyborgs might succeed in changing time, then he should have been more acceptable early on about trying to stop Skynet. Even though, the whole point of the movie was you can't stop Skynet because that's changing time, well then you can't kill John Connors and Kate Brewster because that's changing time. And so, like that, we're willing to accept all the little paradoxes that are in the movie up until this point. But then we get to the point, and it's like everything was meaningless. In 1 minute of narration, John Connor comes out and basically points out the entire plot of the first 3 movies was completely meaningless because we might break the rules of time, which we've already accepted are allowed to be done in the first 2 movies. The third movie I want to discuss is Avengers Endgame. Now, here we have to go through sort of the entire Marvel Studio universe and pick from a few different movies just to show how bad it is. Before we do that, the one thing I really hated about this movie was that it criticized other time travel movies. And Tony Stark's like, no, you're just getting your information from movies, and that's not how time travel works. And then they turn around and they write a bad time travel movie. And again, sort of the rest of the movie itself isn't bad, but their attempt to justify a bad time travel movie after criticizing other time travel movies, which, again, other movies had paradoxes in them, but they were more acceptable paradoxes than what's happening in the Marvel universe here. So that's my first problem with this movie, is that it criticizes other time travel movies when it itself was a horrible time travel movie, in my opinion. So then we jump ahead. Well, we jump back in time, to the Avengers. Avengers takes place in 2012. 3 of the Time Stones exist in New York at this time. The Space Stone, which is the Tesseract. The Mind Stone, which was the little jewel in Loki's scepter. And the Time Stone, which was the Eye of Agamotto, or the little medallion or amulet that Doctor Strange wore around his neck. The problem is they had no reason to believe that the Eye of Agamotto was in New York at this time. Or, to be more specifically, they had reason to believe it was in New York at this time. It wasn't in New York at this time until the writers decided to put it in New York at this time. Now, how do I explain this? So, the Eye of Agamotto, Doctor Strange got it from Kamar-Taj. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. He went to Kamar-Taj because he hurt his hands in an automobile accident, and he was trying to find a way to be able to use them again because he was a surgeon. He hurt his hands in a automobile accident. He was listening to his phone messages at the time and wasn't paying attention, crashed his car. One of his phone messages was about a military officer who was paralyzed and needed a surgeon. Dr. Strange was a neurosurgeon, so he would have been able to help this. the person they are describing is Iron Patriot. If you listen to the message, Iron Patriot is the person who is being talked about on the phone message that Doctor Strange is listening to. So, at this time, the Eye of Agamotto is still in Camartage. Iron Patriot got hurt during the Captain America Civil War movie, which all happened after 2012, the Avengers movie. So, the Eye of Agamotto is not in New York at this time. Doctor Strange takes place, he gets it. He eventually goes to New York. The only people who know that he is in New York are Thor, because Thor meets him there during Ragnarok. Hulk and Iron Man know that he's there because they meet him there during Infinity Wars. All of which happens after the Avengers movie 2012. So the Avengers have reason to believe that the stone is in New York because they don't know Doctor Strange's history, so they don't know how long he's been living in New York. But in reality, it is not in New York, it is in Camartage. So in order for them to be able to get the Time Stone, it has to be there. So during the Chitauri invasion of 2012, the Ancient One went to New York and took the Time Stone there. So it was complete luck that the Time Stone was in New York when they went back to get it. And yeah, they sort of tried to just weasel their way around it. It's complete luck that the Incredible Hulk, he was Hulk / David Banner at the time because he was merged, found it because they really didn't know where to look for it. They sort of had an idea where the Sanctum Sanctorum of New York was, but they had no real reason to believe it was there other than the fact that in the future it's going to be there. So it was really lucky, and again, they had to write in that the Ancient One went to fight off the fleet, which, a complete and total addition to the plot just to justify having the stone there. Then the next big problem is Thanos is time traveling throughout the movie. So Thanos from 2014 finds out about it, goes to the future. Infinity Wars takes place in 2018. So he does not have any of the Infinity Stones, but he knows, if I go to the future, I can find them all in one place and I can get them. So he does so. And then Iron Man gets the stones and blips him out of existence. Which means that Thanos, who originally blipped everyone back in Infinity Wars, never existed because the 2014 one disappeared before he could blip everyone. Infinity Wars was in 2017, so for 3 years Thanos hadn't existed and he could never gone around and collect the Infinity Stone. So they immediately wrote out everything that led up to this point just by having the 2014 Thanos blipped out of existence 3 years before he could blip the rest of the universe out of existence. So again, not a horrible movie altogether, but when it gets to the time travel and parts of it, and especially the fact that it makes fun of other time travel movies, it's just really, really bad. And so that's all. Again, like I said, I don't hate any of these movies. I'm just pointing out that when it comes to time travel, they just allow things to spin out of control and just don't do them as well as they could. There are plenty of other movies which do time travel poorly, but like I said, these are three that stand out. These are three sort of everyone's heard of, but no one's really thought of them in the term of time travel. And that's all. Thank you.